poor whites who essentially had been coming back from the wars, and those who had or sharecroppers coming in from the South, all the people, the Chinese and so forth. He wanted to bring in more of the whites into that type of grunt workforce. So he said, listen, with the type of education system that's already in place, how can I be assured that I would have a dedicated and faithful worker who would work under such oppressive conditions and give me the type of skilled labor I need to build and to forward my idea of what America should be, which is through the Industrial Revolution. So that quote you heard there was one that was given by what was his name again? Please refresh my memory. Sue Covington at the time. Mm-hmm. And he told him, don't worry. Our education system is scientifically designed to keep them stupid. That's what he's saying.
Unbelievable. Dr. Valentine, we are in the age of video games. And could you explain to us the effects of a child playing video games and the ability for that child to learn?
Now, if you want to accelerate a child's learning by giving it certain types of stimuli, and this type of stimuli is light-based stimuli, the brain reacts to certain types of strobing. You could strobe light and get a person, you could hypnotize a person by strobing the light at a specific sequence in timing. Well, that's what most video games are structured around, a strobing mechanism that has them essentially hypnotized to the screen. And, of course, playing the game is the other part of that. It occupies the other part of their brain, the tactile part, or the part that would then participate in the hypnotic suggestion. So when you have a child that has been hypnotically induced to create neural pathways that are hyperactively created. In other words, when you're learning, your brain is creating neural pathways for the creation of neurological nerve endings that would signify or at least begin to coalesce around the learning process. The more and more you do something, the more deeply etched the specific neural electromagnetic pathways that are cut, until such time as the brain begins to solidify neuronal or nerve fibers that connect to synapses that actually now shows you that you've learned that, and your brain knows that. Well, once your brain is conditioned to respond to a specific velocity at the way information comes into your brain, and you're learning at a specific velocity, and it's based on all stimulus, light-based stimulus, once you take a child out of that medium and put the child into a medium that does not have light-based stimulus, but instead is necessary for that child, the boy or the girl, to use a cognitive part of their brains that does not have any stimulus except based on what you can cause by the pictures created by the words that you speak to them. But children's attention spans are not developed based upon you talking to them and then teaching them to create the necessary images within their minds so that they'll create those neural pathways from the images that they create based on your teachings. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So now what you have is a child programmed by the way that those who create the video games, and by the way those who create the video games are, guess who? The Pentagon and military intelligence. They're the ones who structured the military kind of games with the guns and the games that, these war games that you see with these people in straight-up war conditions. They are actually conditioning our children to have this type of warrior mentality so that when they do acclimate to the new kind of military system, they will have been already pre-programmed in their neurological and synaptic linkages. It would already be set in place for them to react to the new way to commit or to create war. But when you have a child that you want to sit down and begin to speak to them, and then you want to reach something in them where they're imaging, that's why the storytellers are so powerful. They no longer speak the stories, they put them on TV and on screens, whereas the ancient storytellers worked both sides of the brain. The TV and so forth shuts down that other part of the brain, and only one side or one part of the brain in alpha waves, The alpha waves now put you into a direct route to your subconscious, whereas beta waves, when you're participating in your learning, beta waves has you interacting with the incoming information. Alpha waves just shuts you down, and you just become this neutral absorber of information. So they could download all kinds of information into your psyche and to the psyche of the children, and your children would begin to pull up information that you didn't know they had or they didn't even know they had. So when they say like the Native American storytellers or our African storytellers, when we told stories and we wove images in the minds of children, we were giving them an organic access to their own spirituality, whereas the way that they're molding the minds of the children today, this inorganic way from outside electronically and due to hyperstimulation, our children are not getting an essential connectedness to their spirit and to their soul. They're essentially just becoming reflective killers or responsive or, reactive slaves to stimulus, just like Pavlov's dog to the bell.
Yes, sir. Dr. Valentine, there's been a phenomenon over the past 25 to 30 years to whereas our children are starting to become drugged. They want to prescribe Ritalin, and they're claiming that these children have ADD. Did you want to expound on that?
Well, the ADD, this is another one of those corporate-made or corporate-structured diseases. It came about because of the way that boys were learning. Remember the old school ways for boys to learn and the old school ways for girls to learn, though they were similar in context, they were different because we were dealing with two different types of physiological and hormonal infrastructures. But what they wanted to do was when the outcome-based education system, which was tailored more to the female way of learning, which was to be more communal and to be more involved with the group, whereas the male was more into individualism because that's what he had to do to develop his individualism so he could be a good provider and protector. Instead now, they took away his ability to individually express himself, which then began to convert that energy inward. There was no outlet. There was no support for that type of energy. There was no way for you to nurture him to be a leader because you wanted him to be a follower, to be somebody who just acted like everyone else. And it is not in the male structure to do that. So what did he do? He began to lash out, and he began to act like a boy who was being bored to death inside of the classroom where everybody is just holding hands and kumbaya. He wanted to crack heads, go against somebody, prove his mettle, the way testosterone pretty much developed the male.
Absolutely.
And that was no longer available. That's why you see the young ladies, the women, accelerating over the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of the introduction of outcome-based education. Now more women are getting PhDs, and people are saying, oh, hallelujah, that's wonderful. But that's insane. That's insipid. That's stupid. If you have more women getting PhDs, what does that mean to the mindset of the young men that you have? What are you doing to the men? If now women are completely excelling at a percentage much higher, that means that you're doing something purposely. That means that you have structured the education system so that the feminine principle would excel, which means you want more followers than leaders, which means you want more people to conform than you want them to lead. Because essentially, if you have someone who by nature was trained to be a leader and saw the kind of madness you see in our community today, they would have already taken the incentive as men collectively to get rid of drug pushers, to get rid of the government that would have the nerve to come and steal your children and tell them it was for their own good. None of that could take place. None of that. But today it can, because we have been feminized to the point where we do not have any male or masculine leadership. We have essentially people who would conform and support the system and give the system that's in place the life it needs to survive.
Absolutely. Dr. Valentine, we're going to go to the callers right now. This person has been queued up for quite a while. Area code 770882. Talk to me. It's Dino Dean. Did you have a question or a comment for Dr. Phil Valentine?
Wow. Greeting, Dino. This is Mama Trolley, newcomer. Wow.
Hey,
Dr. Valentine. I am indeed honored, Dr. Valentine. I have two questions, and I don't want to make it brief because I know you got a whole bunch